What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. As you guys know, I have been playing the hell out of Underdog. We are streaming on the channel once or twice a week, running up drafts. You have the WrestleMania 3 tournament, which is $25 to enter, $10 million in prizes, $2 million to first place. Then you have the puppy, which is huge for Best Ball Summer because it's June right now. There's a lot of us don't want to put in $25 this far out. You put in $5, you get a feel for the market. And on top of that, the tournament is crazy. There's $500,000 in prizes. I think first place gets like $70,000, $75,000. Really, really crazy stuff. Through this point, I'm 60 drafts deep. By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you check out Underdog. Use promo code RON when you deposit. They will match your deposit all the way up to $100. So if you deposit 10, they'll match 10. Again, that is with promo code RON all the way up to 100. So if you deposit 100, they'll match 100. You now have $200 in your account, which is 40 puppy drafts, I believe. I think I did that math correctly. With it being Best Ball Summer, we have drafted a crazy amount of teams. We are now 60 teams deep of WrestleMania 3s and puppies at this point. By the way, the winner last year, Chess Liam, who won the WrestleMania 2 tournament, he won $1 million up top. He drafted his team in June. So there's a lot of really cool values to get this early on by drafting that early on Underdog. So that's why I've been ripping a ton. There's a ton of values to be had. You know, if last year you could have gone Darrell Henderson in like the 15th round, whereas Cam Akers tears his Achilles, and then in August he's like a 4th round pick. So you get some crazy value, especially on injured running backs. So we're going to talk about my top 3 must draft players, guys that I like in redraft in general, guys that I have on pretty much all of my teams. I just figured it'd be good to go over players that I have really high exposure to this early on and kind of talk about where I think the value's at. So with that being said, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
And the first guy we're going to talk about is A.J. Brown, who's going around pick 24. So right at that 2-3 turn in Underdog drafts. And I just refuse to stop talking about A.J. Brown. I refuse to stop talking about this Eagles offense. You guys know, at this point, all dynasty offseason, ever since draft night when A.J. Brown gets traded to the Eagles, I will not shut up about this Eagles offense. I will be overweight on this offense. I'll be betting heavily on this offense for 2022 in terms of redraft. I am very bullish that the people are assuming a run-first offense here, and I don't think that they are really understanding the kind of upside this offense has as a pass-first offense. Because we know the Eagles are an analytics-driven front office. You have Howie Roseman there. And I don't know how the Eagles trade away their 18th overall pick, a 3rd-round pick for A.J. Brown, and then they don't pick a single running back in the NFL draft. They sign undrafted free agent Kennedy Brooks. I don't know how that points to them wanting to lead the league in rush attempts per game again. Like, I can't imagine being an offensive coordinator, a coach, GM, looking at the roster, looking at Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and saying, you know what, it is efficient for us to give most of our touches away to Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, and Kennedy Brooks. It just doesn't make sense. We also know, again, they ended the season leading the league in rush attempts per game. I'm going to bring up this chart. I'm going to bring up this point a million times this offseason. You guys are going to get sick of me talking about the Eagles. I am putting big bets on the Eagles this year in terms of just being overexposed to their passing game. I am a huge believer in this Eagles passing game, because we saw it last year. We know what Nick Sirianni's intentions are. Through 6 weeks last year, Sirianni had the 5th highest passing volume in terms of neutral game pass rates in the NFL. He was up there with the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bucks, as one of these teams that really wanted to get out and throw the ball. Then you had, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside out there, Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor, and they didn't have enough firepower on the outside in the receiving game for Jalen Hurts to maintain that type of offense. So they sort of just backpedaled and shifted the offense on the fly and ran the ball. So now you bring in A.J. Brown, and I think that there's a chance that they want to get back to this, right? They showed early on they want to pass the ball. They made moves in the offense showing that they want to pass the ball. My expectation for the season, they're going to come in there week 1 and want to pass the ball. I think what's going to happen is they're going to set up everything around Jalen Hurts to be a pass-first offense to try and win games that way. And if it doesn't work by like week 4, week 5, they will shut it down. They'll go back to what they did last year, and then they'll replace Jalen Hurts next year. But that's only one possible outcome. There's an outcome where Jalen Hurts is fine under that, sort of system. He has enough weapons now that he can sustain that kind of offense. And if anybody can sort of drag Jalen Hurts kicking and screaming to, 3,500 plus passing yards, being competent in a pass-first offense, it's A.J. Brown. He is an uber talented player. I think we really forget that we want to be drafting first and foremost really good players at football. And A.J. Brown is uber talented. It wouldn't shock me at all next year if he was a first-round redraft pick in 2023. I love his profile for the idea that he's this big, like, hulking wide receiver that can play X. He can play in the slot. He has yak ability. He's efficient. He commands targets. Like, there's nothing that he doesn't do. He is great in terms of yak. He's great before the catch point, so he is great at getting open and commanding targets, and he's efficient. So when you're efficient on both sides of that, like, usually you have guys who are efficient, before the catch. Like, I would say kind of like a Diggs or Devontae Adams, where they get open, but they're not going to give you anything crazy in terms of yak and like massive plays like a Tyreek Hill can. But AJ Brown does both, man. He had a 27% target share last year, which is a dominant rate, 26% before that in year 2. And through his first 3 years, he has been 5th, 2nd, and 5th in yards per out run. Just an absolute monster. Like, I cannot stress enough how crazy AJ Brown is. And then also, we just got fresh off the press. His reception perception came in from Matt Harmon. Matt Harmon does great work where he charts how often wide receivers are getting open. In 2021, and AJ Brown had like an off year last year where he was like hurt and he had some struggles with injury and he was on and off. And he didn't put together a full, 17 games of dominance like we wanted to going into the year. But even with that, in the sample that Matt Harmon looked at, AJ Brown had the second best success rate versus man, behind only Devontae Adams at 96th percentile. The second best success rate versus press, behind only Devontae Adams again at a 98th percentile. He's just a monster. Like, Matt Harmon put at the bottom here, he said, AJ Brown has now cleared a 78% success rate versus man in multiple seasons. Only other wide receivers to do so: Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Antonio Brown, OBJ. And in terms of yak and after the catch efficiency, I really don't think any of those guys can hold a candle to AJ Brown besides Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham. Like, I truly do feel like we are entering a point here going into year 4 with AJ Brown where it's now time for him to start putting up 20 plus point per game seasons. And I think that this year is a really good bet for that to happen. I love him at the 2-3 turn. I gotta be honest with you guys, I have taken him a few times at that 1-2 turn because an underdog, especially when you're in a tournament and you want to get a little bit unique, reaching on a second round player at like kind of that 1-2 turn is a way to get yourself unique. So I went like Devontae Adams, AJ Brown, because Devontae Adams' ADP is 10 and AJ Brown's ADP is like 24. There's not a lot of people in a spot to be able to do that because they would either need to reach on Devontae Adams and take him like 3rd overall, or they'd have to reach on AJ Brown and take him like 12th, 13th, 14th overall. But I truly do think that he should probably be going at that 1-2 turn around, I don't know, maybe this is wild to say, but I'd probably put him like right next to CeeDee Lamb in that like 14, 15 range. That's how I view AJ Brown personally. So if he's still going to go with the 2-3 turn, he will be on over 25% of my teams when it's all said and done. Then we're going to talk about Elijah Moore, Jets wide receiver. His ADP at this point is 67.8, which I believe is the 6th round, right? 5 times 12 is 60. Yeah, so he's like a mid to late 6th round pick at this point. And this one makes absolute no sense to me. Now, let me know if I'm just being like a homer or anything with him being a Jets wide receiver. I really do try and stay like level-headed with Elijah Moore because he is a Jets wide receiver, and I really want to make sure that I'm not just pushing up Jets wide receivers because they're Jets wide receivers. As a rookie, he was great. He had 12.6 points per game as the wide receiver 28. The weird part is now that he is being priced as the wide receiver 32 in underdog ADP. It makes no sense to me because we know about year 2 jumps, right? We saw that
3 hours later.
We saw that last year with T. Higgins, the year before that with like AJ Brown and DK Metcalf. A lot of these year 2 guys come out, break out into like top 5 type guys. We saw it last year with Justin Jefferson as well. The market is expecting him to regress, even though he's going into year 2 from wide receiver 28 to wide receiver 32. And that to me makes no sense. I did a pretty cool study last year where I kind of looked at year 1 to year 2 breakouts in the NFL. And in this entire study, I took wide receivers drafted since 2007, and I charted their fantasy points per game and their target share from their year 1 season, so their rookie season, and then their sophomore season. And I wanted to see how much of a difference in points per game and target share each of those players had. And then I slimmed it down to just the top 100 draft picks there, so we don't have like Stephon Diggs breakouts and other types of guys. We just want to have top 100 picks because that's more of what we're looking for in terms of year 2 breakouts. Like Elijah Moore, he was around pick 50. Then I charted this group of wide receivers against the average wide receiver from 2019. So I took the top 100 wide receivers in points per game from 2019, and then I charted what they did in 2020 to compare sort of what a year 1 to year 2 expectation should look like, and then also what a random veteran in the NFL year 5 to year 6 what that usually looks like. The results are pretty crazy. The average veteran wide receiver actually sees a downtick in target share and points per game, while the average year 2 wide receiver sees a really big increase from year 1. So the year 2 jump's very real, as you guys can see in points per game. Rookie wide receivers go from about 6.79 points per game to 8.9. Target share goes from like 11 to 15%. Whereas on the flip side, you see an average top 100 wide receiver veteran actually have a little bit of a downtick in points per game and target share year to year, just as they get older in their career. So if we know for a fact that most wide receivers heading into year 2 take a pretty good step forward, and Elijah Moore finishes the wide receiver 28, we should expect him to be breaking the top 24 at this point, not falling outside of the top 30 wide receivers. That's what I don't understand. And I completely get it. You know, the Jets, you can say the Jets are trash. You can say Zach Wilson can't support him, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the issue. Last year, he was the wide receiver 28 in points per game as a rookie on a bottom 5 scoring offense with quarterbacks Mike White, Zach Wilson, and Josh Johnson. So his situation was garbage last year. And even if it's still bad this year, and you think that the situation is awful, he still should improve from an individual standpoint and give you fringe top 24 numbers if he was good enough to be a top 28 wide receiver last year. And that's even without counting the fact that through like the first 8 to 10 games, they weren't giving him a full amount of routes. They were playing him behind, or they were rotating him in with like Braxton Berrios and Keelan Cole and even like Vincent Smith and Denzel Mims at times. He didn't get a full crack at it until later on, and even then, his routes were still limited. But now heading into year 2, Elijah Moore is going to be seeing more routes, and that's a really, really good thing because he popped in reception perception. It was really encouraging. Matt Harmon charted his success rate against all types of coverages. He was 81st percentile against man, 76th percentile against zone, 70th percentile against press, above average at everything. And that's as a rookie. He is a very, very solid route runner. The crazy part is that at 5'9", 178 pounds, a lot of us thought coming out that he was going to be a primarily slot guy. Last year, he played 29.9% of his snaps from the slot, 72.3% of them, he played primarily as the X wide receiver and put up those kinds of win rates, put up a wide receiver 28 season. He can play all alignments. He can dominate. He can win on routes. He can command targets. He does everything. So when I really think to myself, why the hell is this guy going in the late 6th round? The only thing I can think of is Garrett Wilson. Here's the issue, though. First of all, we know targets are earned, right? So you can bring in another wide receiver. It doesn't make a huge difference besides maybe a ceiling perspective, right? So if you bring in, like with T. Higgins, you bring in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins ever having a 30% target share, Devontae Adams type season, out the window. But everything else in between, like top 5 season, fringe 19 point per game, 20 point per game on like a 25% target share, that's all in the range of outcomes there. It's just like that massive dominant, Cooper Kupp type season, that's not on the table. Devontae Adams type season, not on the table. But when we're drafting a player like wide receiver 32, I don't think anybody in that range really has access to that kind of ceiling. And we saw with T. Higgins last year, right? So Jamar Chase comes in. T. Higgins was fine. He was a top 12 wide receiver. His target share actually increased by a ton. He had like a 24% target share, 25% target share. Here's the issue for me, is that I understand the apprehension of Elijah Moore with Garrett Wilson if he was a Jamar Chase type talent, right? Jamar Chase came in last year, and in best ball, he was a top 50 pick. Garrett Wilson is going at the wide receiver 49 as pick 100. So it makes no sense to me why Elijah Moore would be a 6th round pick where you're like scared of Garrett Wilson, even though he's the wide receiver 49 in ADP. I don't think it's because of Garrett Wilson. I think it's because of the Jets, the situation where, again, he had the same situation last year. He's going to improve on an individual basis. Targets are earned. Rookie wide receivers don't come in and just command 25% of the targets. Rarely they do something like that. I just don't really get it. Elijah Moore, he's a 6th round pick. You can get him like the 6-7 turn a lot of the time. My thing is, I believe that he should be a 4-5 turn guy like we saw with T. Higgins last year, like we saw with Brandon Ayuk last year. A guy in that area going into year 2 that is expected to take this jump. I don't really get the pessimism around Elijah Moore at this point. So I'm going to keep drafting him until probably, I don't know, maybe the end of the summer. You'll have like the sickos in there that love wide receivers, and he'll get pushed up. But again, to me, it doesn't make sense why he wouldn't be at least like a top 24, top 25 wide receiver in ADP. I think wide receiver 32 is probably too low. The last guy we're going to talk about is Darrell Henderson, who is my favorite running back value right now. He's going in the 12th round. He was great last year. He was a great bet last year going into the year, and he's a great bet this year because we liked him last year as a guy who had a little bit of standalone value where the Rams are going to run the ball, not a ton, but they run the ball a good amount. And with Cam Akers and Henderson as the only 2 running backs, you'd figure that Henderson would have some of a standalone role where maybe he could sort of mess around and give you a flex week here and there, especially in best ball where those will just count in your lineup. But we liked him as a direct handcuff to Cam Akers in a high-scoring offense with Stafford and Sean McVay because they run an offense where whoever's their main back is their bell cow. They give pretty much all of the carries, all the snaps, all the targets to that one running back a majority of the time. So if Akers goes down, Henderson comes in there and is great. We saw that last year, right? So Akers goes down with Achilles, Henderson comes in. He is the RB13 in points per game with 15.7 points per game through his first 10 games until he kind of got like hurt and had some, bruises and scrapes or whatever. But he was in a really nice role where he comes in. He had 15 plus carries in 5 of those games. He had 6 games with 4 or more carries. He had a very nice role. He was he was a perfect starting RB2, fringe RB1 type guy. He was very strong to start the season. He was around a 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th round pick last year. We're now going into this year where he's in the exact same situation, but this time Cam Akers has a torn Achilles, which is a crazy injury to make a comeback from. There's all kinds of complications that can happen. He could just not be the same player anymore. He could get hurt. So you have a lot more outs to that bet where Akers could just be not as good as he once was, and Darrell Henderson could take over that role from him. Akers could re-injure himself, all of that kind of stuff. So you have more outs to winning this bet on Darrell Henderson, and you're paying about that same price. So with Sony Michel gone and Darrell Henderson is the only direct backup, that's a situation that I probably want to bet on where you have a really nice offense that's going to score a ton, and it wouldn't shock me if Akers, even if Akers is going to be healthy for week 1, with the Achilles and stuff, it wouldn't shock me if they almost wanted to ease his workload. It wouldn't shock me as well if he missed 4 or 5 games on the season just from bangs and bruises of sort of coming back from injury. There's a lot of things that can happen. I love Darrell Henderson. I'm not even saying that he's an amazing player. I just think the role is great. There's nobody else behind him that can really threaten that secure handcuff type role. He is almost like an Alexander Madison in a way, but I would even say Alexander Madison, but on a higher scoring offense. So it's an exciting role that he has. He's a great handcuff. He's a staple on all of my 0 running back teams. I am going to be way overexposed on Henderson this year, and probably in turn not as exposed to a guy like Cam Akers, who's kind of going into the RB dead zone at this point. Now, that's going to do it for us today. As always, make sure you go down below, subscribe, and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I think I'm going to be having redraft ranks coming out probably at the end of the month, but we're going to be really transitioning into redraft here, talking some redraft, talking some shop. But yeah, man, let me know if you guys want, or just sort of anything that you guys want covered in the redraft realm. Let me know, sort of brainstorming what we're going to be doing here as we transition from Dynasty to redraft. But as always, I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena for misdemeanors.